Formula One Focus, Cedric is here to chat, and it looks like a season of upheaval. Lots of resignations and firings or alleged firings and stuff. We're going to talk about that. Welcome back, Hendrik.
MW, yes, I don't know, why things happen all at once, basically. But that's Formula One as we have it at the moment.
This is also the reason why we're only putting this episode out on Wednesday, because so much happened just before we were supposed to go on air. We decided to rather postpone and see how it plays out. So let's start with the first news first. Niels Wittich resigned slash was fired as a F1 race director. There seems to be a bit of a conflicting story going around there. Just tell me about that. What happened? Why? This is quite unexpected, especially with the Massey history, Michael Massey history. What's the story?
Yeah, well, this really came unexpectedly. A lot of people in Formula One were taken by surprise by the announcement yesterday that Wittich would step down. Let's put it this way: the FIA statement, the FIA came out with a statement basically saying that Wittich will step down with immediate effect, and that he would be replaced by the Formula 2, Formula 3 race director, Rui. What is his name again?
Marquez.
Marquez, yes. And that will happen with immediate effect. So that is a real surprise. There were some indications during the course of the year, but very faint indications, not something that one would really take into it too seriously, that he was going to step down or resign at the end of the season anyway. But now we still have 3 races to go. The announcement came out of the blue. Apparently, Wittich was only told hours before the statement was made by the FIA. And that all indicates to me that if he did not resign, he was pushed. If he wasn't fired, he was pushed to resign. And now one can speculate about the reasons for that, but it clearly shows some upheaval behind the scenes on very senior level at the FIA. Wittich is not the first senior figure from the FIA that resigns this year or in the last 12 months or so, maybe 18 months. I counted about 7 people that have senior people that have left the FIA since about the middle of last year, and all, of course, under the presidency of Mohammed Ben Sulayem. There are questions about that. Why does it happen that so many senior figures leave, and most of them left without long notice? Most of them left or resigned on short notice and with immediate effect, and were immediately replaced. I mean, just that simple fact shows that things are not happening, or things are not stable behind the scenes at the FIA. And of course, the buck stops at the FIA president. We know from the coverage from mainly English language media. I'm not convinced that it's the same necessarily in other language media, but the British media or the English language media seem to be very critical of the FIA president for various reasons. The things they feel basically that he's too involved, he's too hands-on, that he should step back, and that he should let those experts of in Formula One, basically manage the championship, and just be more hands-off figure, and get more involved in bigger issues than things like, should the drivers wear jewelry, or should the drivers swear in FIA press conferences. He should not get involved, they say. I tend to agree with that, but that doesn't mean that he's not a good president. It doesn't mean that he doesn't have wide support within the FIA. And the other thing that one should always remember about the position of the FIA president, of course, there's about a year now to go for him to be re-elected. So lots of things, I think, in the next year that he will be involved in will be aimed at trying to get re-elected by the end of next year. So let's also just remember that the FIA president is elected by the members of the FIA. Formula One has got no say about the election of the FIA president. I've mentioned this before. Neither do the drivers. They don't have any say at all. It's the members, the bodies such as the AA of South Africa that are members of the FIA, and there are 260 odd of them, I think. It's them that vote for the FIA president. So he's playing to his constituency whenever he does something. He's not playing to the FIA fan base or the Formula One fan base necessarily. Of course, that would play a big role, but it's not necessarily the main role or the most important role for him to play. So, within that context, I think it is fair to say that things are not quite the way they should be, and that there's a lot of unhappiness behind the scenes. A lot of people resigning like that, and in the way that they have, or leaving like that. I think that just points to it. Last week we had the situation where the Formula One drivers, the Grand Prix Drivers Association, wrote a letter in which all 20 current drivers agreed that they were not happy with the way that he is dealing with things like swearing, dealing with things like where does the money for the fines go that they get if they get fined, where does that money go to, and what happens with that? They asked him for more transparency about that sort of thing. So one can, I think, assume that those are the kind of issues that may be playing a role behind the scenes. I'm not going to say that that's a fact, but it does seem to be a fair assessment that those are the kind of issues that play a role. As far as Wittich is concerned, the speculation is, and there's nothing more than speculation at the moment, maybe informed speculation, that there was some kind of a bust up between him, Wittich, and Ben Sulayem. And that led to him deciding to leave, because the timing is just absolutely unbelievable. 3 races to go, both championships still up for grabs in Formula One. The Formula One race director is not the kind of position that you change people, willy-nilly. I know this is, what is it, the 5th, I think, since 2021. But before that, Charlie Whiting was the FIA race director for many, many, many years, and that allowed for a lot of for stability, because you're dealing with the same person at the same time. Ever since his death, just before the start of the 2019 season, the FIA Formula One race director position has been filled by 4 or 5 people, I think. That's not a good situation. It's not a good thing. You want the same person there so that you can have consistency. And I don't know, how Mr. Marquez is going to deal with the pressure of the final 3 races, where there are major consequences for decisions by the race director, as we've seen with Michael Masi in 2021 at Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, no, it's talk about being thrown into the deep end. The point is
Yes.
about Mohammed Ben Sulayem. It's I think it was Jose that said it's a voluntary position, no salary. It's all about power. And I wonder how long it's going to take for Formula One to decide to rather, carve out their own way and look after their own interests. Because there seems to be a bit of a antagonism between these two
There's been a
bodies.
number of there's been a number of efforts throughout the years for Formula One to break away, but it's not a real practical situation, because there are contracts in place, all kinds of different contracts with promoters and with TV broadcasters and things like that. It's not simple to just break away and do your own thing, especially not a big world level sport like Formula One. I think the better way, and that's my opinion only, a better way is for the FIA to stick to its role as the administrator of the regulations. Let's not forget the FIA administers the regulations not only for Formula One, but for all the major motorsport championships in the world, except for those in America. So it's an organization that has very wide reach, and for one championship to try and break away and do their own thing I think it would be a PR nightmare, or a PR disaster anyway. So let them stick to their administrative role. Let them put the regulations together and apply the regulations, and stick to that. And let the Formula One commercial rights holder, in other words, the Formula One management or Formula One group or Liberty, if you wish, let them do the sporting side of things, and the commercial side of things, and the deals behind the scenes, and things like sponsorships and so on. So let's I think see maybe a more dedicated or definition of the roles of the two. They tend to mix, get a little bit mixed. One thing that I feel very strongly about is that the teams should have absolutely no say in the making of the regulations. The teams and the commercial rights holder, the FIA and the commercial rights holder should work on that, but the teams should not have any say at all, as far as I'm concerned, and drivers even less, because they don't have the bigger picture. They only have their own their own benefits to look after. And they do not see the bigger picture of, and we've seen that many times, that, changes that would be good for the sport get, let's just let's just mention Andretti. Things that can be very good for the sport as a whole get blocked by people that should not be in a position to be able to block that. And those are the teams and the drivers, in my view.
You talk about the commercial rights holder. There's a difference now with Liberty being there and being a profit-driven organization. And when an organization such as the FIA starts impacting your bottom line, in the sense that the guy is throwing his weight around when it shouldn't be, I think there's going to be a bust-up. I'm not saying there's going to be a breakup, but there's definitely some sort of a confrontation looming, I would think.
Well, there has been. There's been a number of bust-ups or confrontations between Formula One and the FIA ever since Ben Sulayem took over as the president. There was right at the beginning when he dropped in some interview somewhere that he cannot see the Formula One as a sport being valued at $20 billion. And F1 immediately came back and said, that's not your role to say anything like that, because when you say that, that could influence the value of our asset. So, right from the start, there's been lots of I wouldn't say lots of controversies, but there's been a number of clashes between Formula One, the rights holder, and the FIA in the form of their president. So it's not unheard of. And let's not forget that the FIA owns Formula One. It is the FIA World Championship. They only lease out the commercial rights for a certain period to a certain person, and that person, let's call it a person, legal person anyway, legal entity, can use that commercial rights for their benefits and even sell those rights on. But until I think it's 2109, the FIA still holds the rights to Formula One, or still owns the championship. Let's put it that way. Still owns the championship. They've just leased it on a long-term basis to various entities until 2109.
But talk about resignation. It's not a resignation as such, but stepping down. Dan Fellows stepping down as technical director from Aston Martin. You and I talked about this when it was announced Adrian Newey is joining and Enrico Cardile is joining from Ferrari, and Andy Fellows, Andy Cowell came over from Mercedes, the CEO. Things a bit in flux there, and it was sort of inevitable that he would step down. Seems like he was going to stay in the group, but from what I can read from his statement, it seems to me like he says he's sure they're going to be successful and he'll be watching. It sounds like he's going to be removed from it. I'm not sure. He did very well when he started, but I don't think he's going to stick around.
Well, apparently he's obviously he's going to leave the Formula One team, but apparently he's going to stick around in some role, undefined at this point, in the larger Aston Martin group. So who knows what's going to happen? Yeah, I think a lot of big fish in one pond often don't work. And of course, Dan Fellows has been sort of carrying the flag, the technical flag for Aston Martin over the last few seasons since he left from Red Bull. At that point, when he left Red Bull, obviously there was no indication that Adrian Newey would also leave, and in fact, even less that he would follow him to Aston Martin. So Dan Fellows has been in charge, let's say, effectively for the last 2 seasons at Aston Martin. Did pretty well last year, although they started strong and sort of petered out towards the end of the season. And then this year they started out fairly strongly and then, just dropped off as the season progressed and stuck in 5th position at the moment, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that's probably the reason that Lawrence Stroll thought, look, we've got Adrian Newey coming in, we've got all these other guys that you've mentioned, Cordile and Cowell and so on. Maybe it's time for Dan Fellows to and maybe that's part of a bigger restructuring in the light of the arrival of Adrian Newey, that there's no place for another big fish like him in this pond at Aston Martin. So it probably was inevitable. If Aston Martin was a championship contender this year, it probably would not have happened. Yeah, and again, I'm not saying he was fired. I think it's there are ways and means internally in a company where you can sort of get the message across. Maybe it's time for you to look at pastures greener, which is what they said. He's going to explore other possibilities.
Well, it's like you said. I mean, if they were a championship winning team, that wouldn't have been a problem. They started very well. They had 8 podiums in 2023. And I still remember to this when they brought the Miami upgrade, they started going backwards. And they haven't
Mm.
stopped since. And every time that they bring a new big upgrade, it seems to be worse than the one before. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not surprised. I think he was a bit out of his depth. Maybe rode and Adrian knew his coattails a bit. So why would you get a copy if you can get the real thing, the original? So Adrian knew it makes sense to me.
Yeah, and would they work together at the same team again? You know, I would assume that when you get to that senior level that Dan Fellows was at, and his move from Red Bull to Aston Martin was a promotion. Um, Now you get your old boss back. Don't you then expect to be moved to a more senior position based on, So I don't know, but yeah, clearly, the time for him has gone. Time for him to move on has come.
No, it's not only his boss again, it's a shareholder as well. So a bit of an untenable situation.
Indeed, yes.
All right, let's talk about the other big news, and we've been expecting it. It's just been confirmed now. Alpine signing up to use Mercedes engines and gearboxes from 2026 up to 2030. That's
Yeah.
all pointing towards the fact the steam is up for sale. We've said it time and time again, and you mentioned
Yes.
Andretti earlier. I wanted to say something then, but I thought I'd leave it for now. The steam is being set up for sale. Things are being set up, cleared up. Flavio Briatore is actually doing what he was supposed to be, what he was appointed for. He's cleaning house, he's setting things straight, he's cutting costs, bringing a new dynamic team principle. David Sanchez from Ferrari to McLaren for a couple of months now at Alpine, he's making a difference there. That team seems to be becoming more competitive. Clearly pointing towards the fact it's going to be for sale. But the fact, why did they choose Mercedes engines as a matter of interest? I know the reason why they stopped making their own engines is one story, but why go for Mercedes, for example?
Well, I think various reasons. Clearly, Mercedes has been, or the engine at least, not necessarily the car for the last few years, but there's never been any doubts about Mercedes as being best, if one of the best, if not the best, engine since the hybrid era came in 2014. So that's probably the main reason, because it's a proven entity, it's a proven performance contributor. There's no reason why they should go to Ferrari, for instance, or any of the other. I don't know who else was available. Let's also not forget that when they were known as Lotus in 2015-ish, they also used Mercedes engine, the same team. Uh,
Yeah.
Different management and different ownership and whatever, but still the same team. So that's a good, and of course, depending on the price that they have to pay. Um, they clearly did this for financial reasons as well. So they must have weighed up what it would have cost for themselves to do their own engine, which is the reason why De Meyo's decided that they're going to stop that exercise. They're going to look for somebody else, and the other option just made a lot of financial sense. So from a performance point of view and a financial point of view, I think it made sense for them to do that. And let's also not forget that McLaren is currently a Mercedes customer, and they are doing pretty well in the championship. So there's another reason. I think it all made sense from that point of view, from a performance point of view, from a financial point of view. And who knows? I'm not going to argue with you that they are getting this team to be in a position to be sold down the line, somewhere down the line. You're a customer team. It's a much easier sell to somebody else than to be a full factory team, because in that case, there's a lot of other complications that come into play, things like labor relations and that sort of thing. You're a privateer, basically, and you are using a customer engine and gearbox, or basically the back end, it seems, of the current Mercedes. So, from that point of view, it also makes sense. Get the team ready to be sold off in a couple of years from now for a very good profit.
The other side of that, of course, is that there's a Mercedes engine available because Aston Martin's going with Honda since from 2026, so they're not going to be using the Mercedes engine.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, all of those factors obviously played a role. So, who knows? Are they going to get the Flavio Briatore says they need zero point 0.3 of a second. Let's not assume that they are getting more and more competitive just based on the Brazilian result, obviously, because conditions there were completely different. We'll get a better idea next time in Las Vegas for the last three races. We'll get a better idea of whether Alpine has actually improved or not. But they were there to take advantage of the situation and the conditions in Sao Paulo. So good luck to them. Well done to them.
I read that David Sanchez, he joined McLaren from Ferrari beginning of the year and they left after 3 months and then joined Alpine. Apparently, there was a huge upgrade, almost a B-spec car, supposed to be launched just before the summer break, and he paused that, he halted it, and he went back to a gradual sort of upgrades. I think so, probably for him to understand things better. And that approach seems to be bearing fruit here. They might not have done as well that they could have at Brazil, more a question of luck. But the point is that car is definitely improving, like you said.
Again, well, let's see. I think it's a little bit early to identify a trend, but that thing about big upgrades seems to be the one of the main reasons why, and I think you mentioned it earlier, why a team like Aston Martin has faltered. Because we are at this point in a development war in the current regulation dispensation, where micro improvements seem to be the better way of improving. When you bring a big improvement or a big upgrade, it may work in one area, maybe in terms of the floor, but in other ways it may not work. Let's say maybe not at the diffuser at the back, or the way that you have to set up your suspension or anything like that. So and I think other teams have also found it this current season, and we're going to see more of that next year. Small incremental improvements is the only way to do it, instead of bringing big upgrades, because a big upgrade can infringe on other aspects of your car that you maybe not foresee with a big upgrade. So I think we're not going to see big upgrades anymore, especially not next season. Maybe some teams, I don't know which team is going to be brave enough to bring in upgrades for the last three races. Maybe one of the three top teams would do that because they still want to win it. And let's not forget, all three of them are still in it for the Constructors' Championship. And let's not forget, theoretically, Lando Norris is still in with a very, very small chance in the Drivers' Championship. So, those three teams involved will do whatever they can to maximize their chances until the end of the season.
The other big news that broke was this season launch that they're going to have next year. It's a combined thing with pop stars and everything, and they're going to be charging admission for it and everything. Tell me about that. That seems to be a bit controversial.
Well, Formula One, or let's say Liberty, they've been on the record right from the beginning. I can almost remember when they took over the Formula One way back, when was it, 2016-ish, when they said, and what we're going to do every year is we're going to have a big launch of the next season with all teams involved. And that has never happened, except I think on one occasion in Australia, where at the beginning of the weekend, they basically had a form of a season launch. That was the opening race of the season. I forget which year it was a few years ago. And they made a big deal of all the teams on the one stage on one occasion. But that was an admission-free event, and it was also the only time that they did that. Basically, that they brought all the teams in turn all the drivers onto the big stage there, and interviewed them, and lots of razzmatazz and whatever. Or they came down the river or something like that. But whatever, into the lake. That's right, at Albert Park. So that was the only time that they did that. Now they're going to have a huge season launch, including all 10 teams and all 20 drivers, and there will be a lot of razzmatazz, and pop stars are going to be involved in this thing. I heard the name of Madonna, and I heard the name of Justin Bieber. I'm not sure that I want to see either of them live if it was me. But anyway, and a few others also. So they're going to make a big thing out of this to launch the 2025 season, which is the 75th season in Formula One history. So there's a nice tie up there. But what they're going to do is they're going to do it at the O2 Arena in London. and they're going to charge they're going to charge for people. People can buy tickets for that. Charge for access. So apparently the prices range from between £58 to something like £115. Now, if you convert that to rands in our terms, and this is for our South African viewers, that works out to between somewhere around R1,500 to R2,500, which to me is a little bit expensive. Maybe, for a normal pop concert, one of the big artists, that's sort of par for the course. But I'm not sure that I will pay that. And I've seen a lot of the English language publications also complaining about not only the prices, but what are you going to get for your money? Yes, you may see one or two songs performed by the likes of Madonna or Justin Bieber. That's certainly not going to be a full concert by either of them. Maybe one or two songs and whoever else is involved. You're going to see next year's car liveries. You're certainly not going to see next year's cars, because in February the cars are not ready yet. They are not, sometimes not even the new cars taking part in the pre-season test in Bahrain in February before the season starts in March. We often only see the new cars at the first test in Bahrain. So you're not going to see the new cars. You're going to see the new liveries, and you're going to see a lot of interviews with all the drivers. And I'm not sure that they're going to say anything, but we are looking forward to this season. It's a great opportunity to show what we can do, and it's absolutely a high time that we get behind the wheel again. I can't wait to sit behind the wheel of the new car. I'm very excited about the new season, and we're certainly going to be more competitive than next. You're going to hear a lot of that. So, will I pay R1,500 to see and hear that? I don't think so.
It's
But,
a snooze fest
it's a
already,
PR
man.
exercise. It's a PR exercise for Formula One to try and make it, the new season start with a big splash. It's all about the spectacle of the launch. And, this is the way that Liberty does the thing. Wait just a week or so from now and see all the razzmatazz that's going to happen in Las Vegas, like we saw last year. This is the American way of doing it. So, and that's fine with me. I don't have a problem with that, as long as we recognize it for what it is.
Yeah, no, like you said, I said it's each team launch, you wait for the livery and they and ah, and then there's a couple of token heads saying something. It's a snooze fest with one team. Imagine you have to, battle through 10 of those, one after the other. No.
Yeah, there's another aspect to this from the team's point of view, and that is when you have individual team launches, and what they've done in the past, the teams, they would coordinate so that you don't have two or three teams launching at the same time, so that you can have maximum media exposure. Maybe you have two launches on the same day, say one in the morning, one in the afternoon, but those things would have been planned longer before between the PR teams of the different teams to ensure that they get maximum publicity. The advantage of a single event per team is that you get the media to that single event, and you as a team get the maximum exposure. On an occasion like this, where you have all 20 at the same time in one evening, teams will not be able to get that kind of maximum exposure. What kind of coverage are you going to get about that? For weeks after that, are we going to see the new launches? No, that's old news by 2 days after. So, that's another aspect that I think one should take into account as well. But of course, Liberty looks at the sport as a whole. They're launching the sport, the new season, for the sport. They're not launching individual teams' cars for the new season. Who knows? Maybe teams will do their own thing. I don't know how they're going to do it next year in the light of this, but we'll see.
I actually look forward to these team launches. That's part of my calendar. This is this day and this day. Who's going to be first? Who's going to be last? I didn't enjoy the launches themselves so much, but it's something to look forward to. I like to see the the liveries.
It's significant. Yeah, it's significant who's willing to show their new car, even though it may be masked, though it may not be the final livery and most of it is black, but to show the new car, that is more a psychological thing than anything else, to show that we are the first to be ready for the new season. And those that are last, maybe they're not quite ready. And generally that's been the case. Those that have been able to launch early have been pretty strong, except somebody like Red Bull. Red Bull have always waited until the last possible moment to show their new car, to maximize their design opportunity, which is another way of doing it.
Okay, and look, next week is the Las Vegas Grand Prix, though. We'll talk about that next week. lots of other
Yeah, look
news though.
forward.
Yeah.
Look forward next week to a lot of launches of Las Vegas specific liveries.
Oh,
And
interesting.
tie-ups by the teams. Look forward to that. I see Ferrari's already tied up with who was it? Is it Paramount or one of the big movie companies in America? They've had it. They've announced a tie-up for the new movie Gladiator 2.
Oh,
Uh, so that's a follow-up on the Russell Crowe movie from a long
way
time
back
ago.
when. Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
see you have
So
a chocolate now. Kit Kat is now the chocolate
MGM,
sponsor.
MGM, that's the company that I'm thinking of. So Ferrari have now teamed up with them, and there's going to be lots of content about that, believe me. And there's going to be a lot of other teaming up with American entertainment businesses, I think, along with a lot of Las Vegas specific color schemes. So look out to that. Look out for that next week.
No, like I said, Kit Kat is now the official chocolate of Formula One's from next year. I mean, what else
I
can you
mean,
get?
would you have thought that 10 years ago? That
No.
Formula One would have official chocolate sponsor. I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's almost verging
But
on
you know,
on ridiculous. Yeah, yeah.
that's the way they do it. That's the way the Americans do it. And in many ways I love it because they are really making a big deal of the sport that I love too.
I saw the Sphere is now a Formula One wheel. I don't know if you saw that. The Sphere in Las
Oh
Vegas.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
the sphere, of course, that is going to be absolute. The interesting thing about it, which I only remember from last year when I went through last year's news at this time of the year, was that there are certain colors and I think images on the sphere in Las Vegas that they're not allowed to show because that's going to be too distracting to the drivers. I don't know what
Oh,
those are, but apparently there are some limitations on what they can do with the sphere while the race is on, not to distract the drivers. So, yeah, no, look, there's a lot of things to look forward to for the Las Vegas Grand Prix, not least of which probably the fourth championship for Max Verstappen, which is kind of ironic if you think about it. That this whole season, most of the second half of the season, we have expected this to go down to the wire, and now we are most probably going to see the championship decided with 2 races to go. But who knows?
yeah. We talked about that last week, whether Lando's got the killer instinct or not, and the likes. But I think you're right. Max will probably be crowned the champion. The other thing that most people are actually looking forward to is seeing how the Constructor Champions played out. McLaren's there, Ferrari's there, Red Bull has now slipped back to third. That's going to be I think that's going to go right down to the wire, to Abu Dhabi.
I think so too. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
All right, Indra. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Always interesting. Talk again next week before the Las Vegas Grand Prix.
Talk to you then. Cheers.
Thanks, Indra.